Is this what Democrats are going to run on? Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, as almost everybody knows by now, a procedural measure to vote on what Republicans were calling, I want to get the title correctly, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. That procedural move was blocked, essentially preventing that act to come to a vote. And I want to read you essentially what this act is so we understand what we're talking about and what 44 Democrats voted against. I'm going to read here from my computer screen from a story in the Washington Post. The bill would require a healthcare practitioner to, quote, exercise the same degree of professional skill, care, and diligence to preserve the life and health of the child, end quote, as he or she would to, quote, any other child born alive at the same gestational age, end quote. The bill includes criminal penalties, a right of civil action for an affected mother, and a mandatory reporting requirement for other health providers. So, gentlemen, in effect, what this bill says is if a doctor is trying to perform an abortion and it doesn't succeed, and by succeed, I mean kill the baby, then the doctor would be punished if he didn't try to preserve the life of the baby or protect the life of the baby. 44 Democrats blocked that. 44 Democrats said, no, we'd rather let the baby die. Stephen Green, how does this play with Mr. and Mrs. America out in the Great Plains of the unwashed going into a 2020 election?
Yeah, let me tell you a story that I almost never tell because 8.5 years later, almost 9 years later, I still wake up sometimes in the middle of the night with sweats. Give me a sec. Got to gather myself here. It just shakes me. When my youngest, Nate, was born, what's the term when the umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby's throat during birth? I can't remember the medical term. So we found out very late in the delivery process that this is what was going on, and my baby came out gray. This is not a healthy color for a child. And Dr. Cassidy and her great team of nurses whisked me and the baby away from Melissa to the far end of this rather large maternity room, delivery room, to the incubator where they warmed him and compressed his chest until he started breathing on his own. And Melissa, my wife, is saying, is everything okay? And I'm looking over my shoulder, lying to my wife. Everything's great here. We're just taking care of the baby. I was gray at this point, Melissa tells me later on. And there were no problems. I'm thinking, oh my God, is my baby going to die? Is my baby going to be brain damaged? What's going to happen here? And it turns out he's just a little hellion. He's one of the best kids ever. But imagine any situation where you look at a gray newborn, and instead of whisking that newborn away to an incubator, you kill it. Imagine that. That's how this is what these Democrats voted for with their no vote. That's how this plays here. I don't know how. I wanted to talk about the politics of it. I guess I'm going to get to that now. The Democrats, we're watching them right now, betting on all kinds of crazy infanticide. That's crazy. It's evil. They're going all in on transgender insanity. That instead of helping people with a serious issue, we instead need to let boys compete against girls in high school sports. We're seeing them bet so big on crazy, and I think, and evil as well, and I think I know why. They see Trump as weak in 2020. And one of the reasons they do is because of a story I saw earlier today where some Never Trump Republicans are apparently planning on running a Republican in the primaries against Trump next year who is just strong enough to mortally wound Trump going into 2020 because they'd rather see, these Republicans would rather see a Democrat elected than Donald Trump serve a second term. I've been calling them Never Trump dead enders because that's what they are. And the Democrats see this, and they see a once-in-a-lifetime chance to elect the most radical left-wing president in this country's history. Somebody who's going to make Barack Obama seem like a moderate. And they're doing this because they think they've got a chance, and why not take it?
Now, Bill Whittle, the Democrats are saying, listen, infanticide is already illegal, and this whole bill was really just a Republican stalking horse intended to open the pathway for more abortion regulation. And Bill, I could certainly see Republicans crowing about this in their home district if the thing passed. And if it got defeated by Democrats, in their minds, so much the better, because that makes Democrats look terrible. Bill, do you sense that there's just political brinksmanship and gamesmanship behind this? Or is it possible that there's an ounce of sanity and humanity left in one of the political parties?
Did any Republicans vote for this?
My understanding is no, and 3 Democrats voted against that procedural motion as well.
Then I'm on the right side.
All but 3 Democrats voted against it.
Then I'm on the right team.
Right? The anti-infanticide
I'm on the right team. It doesn't matter how incompetent or disappointing or lack of spine we often complain about the Republican Party. All of the things that we legitimately abhor about the weakness of Republican politicians and their inability to have a spine or a backbone on issues that are of enormous importance, all of that just vaporizes. It's gone. We're on the right team. If there are no Republicans who voted for this mind-numbing exercise in, I don't even know what to call it anymore. But my first reaction after the shock of the fact that 44 people did vote for it is that I'm on the right side. That the political opinions I hold are based on some fundamental humanity, some fundamental decency and humanity. I've been ashamed of things that my government has done. I've always loved my country. And this is making it pretty tough because it's not just 44 people, it's the people that elected these 44 people who have decided that the way that they can show the rest of their friends how morally advanced they are is to basically be in favor of taking a baby that has survived an abortion procedure and then not treating that living, breathing baby as a human being. This is the badge of honor that they wear. There's not only the badge of honor that they wear, it is the criteria by which they determine whether or not they are in fact a Democrat. This is the issue that determines whether or not you are a Democrat. If you're a woman and you're not willing to do this, if you're not willing to have a baby that's alive on a table someplace put to death, then you're not really a woman, which means you're not really a Democrat. And when we get to these kind of issues, when you get to these kind of issues, the stuff that seems like silliness, like sitting in front of a computer and recording a commentary show with 2 old friends, suddenly stops being silliness. Now I feel like some kind of crusader or biblical prophet with the power to do something about this unspeakable evil that is happening in this country, and for people to be proud of this. I think the Babylonians would be mortified at this. I think the Romans would be mortified at this. I can't think of a society in the history of the earth, and there are some horrible, horrible, horrible societies out there. I can't think of a single society that would be looking at this and saying, no, we did worse than this. How do you say this? How can you even have the conversation that in the United States of America, members of the Senate of the United States, significant members, not like a crazy person, significant members, nearly half of the Senate of the United States of America, voted for something that is this morally not just repugnant, it's simply
It's evil.
unbelievable.
It's evil,
It's
Bill.
unbelievable. And Scott, the reason that you can get to this level of evil is built into the name of the bill, which is the reason that the progressives have been able to reach a point where 44 members of the United States Senate can vote to murder a living baby has come about because Republicans, who are supposed to know better, are absolutely incapable of doing the most fundamental things in the world. And I will close this by giving you an example of what I'm talking about. What is the name of the bill in question? Could you read it again for me, please?
Yes, it is the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act.
It is the Murder Baby Empowerment Act is what it is. And these are not medical providers. They are not healthcare providers. It is the law that empowers doctors to murder living babies. And if you called it that, you would be at the core of the issue. And if you said this is the bill to prevent doctors from murdering living babies act, then we would at least be having a discussion over what is actually happening rather than the abortion provider care and protection. This is how evil is able to prosper, by taking terms that are so bloodless and so free of any meaning, free of any emotional connection. It's just a series of intellectual. It's like one of these term papers that these left-wingers turn out, intersectional feminism and the crisis of confidence in the West after World War II, a treatise on white supremacy. This kind of nonsense academic bullshit that is just the part and parcel of what these monsters live on. But I've never been ashamed of my country before the way I'm ashamed of my country now. I'm just plain ashamed. And if we don't do something about this, then we are going to deserve the hell that we are certainly going to find ourselves in.
Listen, the best possible spin that can be put on this vote by 44 Democrats against a Born Alive Abortion Survivor Protection Act would be that it has become so politicized in Washington, D.C., that if Republicans propose a bill that says that the sun is hot, they will get universal Democratic opposition to that bill just because it's Republicans proposing the bill. That's the best possible spin, that we are so hyper-partisan that it doesn't merely matter what's in the bill. We're opposed to Republicans, and we will vote down whatever they propose. It is inherent in humanity to feel compassion for the weak, for the injured, for the diseased, for the struggling. It is hard to imagine a leftist or progressive or Democrat in the country who wouldn't at least feel something if they saw an animal struggling by the side of the road that had been hit by a car, if not actually stop and pull over. I myself have stopped on numerous occasions to rescue turtles and move them to the other side of the road.
Turtles.
I mean, I'm not a heroic person. Anybody would do this. This is because it is your natural inclination to prevent suffering. You don't like to see anything suffer. And so you go out of your way to make sure that that doesn't happen. If somebody is injured, we want to rescue them. If somebody is drowning, we want to pull them out of the water and save them. If somebody is dying, we want to save their life. We learn CPR so we can save the lives of absolute strangers in the street. If we run across somebody who's having a heart attack, we want to be ready to help them, not to mention our own loved ones. And so that's why most of America is going to look at this vote by 44 Democrats in the Senate and say, how is it possible that these are human beings who voted against the most basic measure that anybody would want to take? It's a healthcare professional that's in attendance there, a person who's sworn to protect and save and heal. And yet somehow they're going to, at the very least, stand back and allow somebody to die. There's nobody that's probably more compassionate than most of my left-wing or progressive friends who have more of a heart for things that suffer, who care more about animals. And there is a great deal of praise for people that we call survivors, people who have been through disease, people who have been through a sexual assault or acts of violence and rape. And we hail these survivors, and our heart goes out to them, and we want to do well for them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would contend that if somebody comes in for a late-term abortion that is so late that if they were not to have an abortion and merely if the doctor were to facilitate the birth, that child has a good chance of living, and that baby then goes the further step of surviving an attempt on its own life, of being able to somehow get through whatever procedure the doctor is using to try to end that baby's life, and yet somehow it comes out alive. How do we not see this person as a survivor? How do we not look at that person as somebody that we want to save? How can you possibly, for a moment, not stop and say, wait a minute, if that was my baby, would I say, never mind, doc, let it die? I don't think so. Not only are you hurting the individual who dies in that situation, you're hurting that woman who lives with the burden throughout the rest of her life, as abortion hurts most women who undergo abortions. Folks, I am not, as you well know, a big supporter of President Trump. But if President Trump will continue to appoint justices who will vote to overturn nonsense like this, then he will have my enthusiastic support, and I'll hold my nose at all the rest, because you cannot have a society that does not value life. You cannot have a society that can look at a living baby and say, I don't think we'll do anything about that one. You know, when somebody attempts to murder another person and that person survives, we do everything we can to save the life of the victim. If somebody attempts to commit suicide and fails to be successful, often getting wounded in the process, we will do anything we can to save the life of that person. So what's the difference? In the situation of abortion, there's a different scenario here that Democrats fully understand and Republicans haven't figured out yet. The reason why we don't try to save the baby is because it wasn't a person trying to kill them. It wasn't a person trying to kill himself. It was the state trying to kill the baby. And the state must not be opposed. In effect, the state is God. That's how you think. That's how you'll vote. I don't think most people watching this think that way. I don't think most registered Democrats think that way. And I hope you'll vote your conscience instead of your party. And my left-wing and progressive friends, this is not you. You are better than this. This is not the kind of person you are. You have been deceived by your leaders, and it's time to walk away. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com who make this possible.